tuning into today's video. You're going to have a look at the weather through the rest of the week into next week. Today looks like turning more unsettled. I did warn about this, that the following weather for the first few days of June probably wouldn't last, and it's not going to. It's breaking down today with light rain coming across the country. Be more unsettled tomorrow with some really quite heavy rain actually on Wednesday. And then beyond that, looks like we're going to keep low pressure influences going through the weekend and into next week. We'll have a run through the charts in a moment, see what's going on. They're not particularly inspiring, but there will be some reasonable days coming up as well, so it's not going to be a complete and total washout. It's not going to be 2007 or last year 2012. Not going to be a deluge day after day after day, but certainly generally quite a sort of a mixed, changeable spell coming up. Now, if I go on video, just want to mention the advertising. There's keyword ads on all my pages at gasobiz.com. They green words, and you can run your cursor over those words and they'll display ads. If you click through the words, you'll go through to the advertiser's website, and you'll be supporting gazweathervids.com by doing that. So thank you very much for supporting the website. So we're going to start off with the facts chart just for tomorrow. This is the human interpretation of the models by the forecasters at the Met Office. Very unsettled looking chart this, with a deep area of low pressure sitting right over the top of the country. Loads of weather fronts as well strung out. Quite a complex sort of mess of weather fronts really, but what it's basically saying is that it's going to be unsettled. Quite a strong southwesterly wind, and there'll be outbreaks of rain coming through with that as well. And actually on this point here, where we've got a warm front and a cold front meeting, there was some really quite heavy rain swinging across England and Wales. So the high resolution NAE precipitation forecast, this is the high resolution model from the UK Met Office. You can find this at the website Weather Online. The high resolution model is showing quite a bit of rain tomorrow. One area of heavy rain coming up through southern England in towards south east and Midlands. Another area of heavy rain across Northern Ireland, central southern Scotland. A drier slot in the middle across northern England. But I think eventually, even there, we might see some of this heavy rain in the south moving up. So yeah, really quite an unsettled day tomorrow. The first proper wet day probably of June for many of us. We've got a strong wind as well in the south with that, so that's something to be aware of around those southern, southwestern coasts. If you're going out on a boat tomorrow, it will be really quite windy. Now, as we go out beyond that, we're keeping it unsettled. This is the chart for Saturday, the 15th of June, with this deep area of low pressure, 990 millibars, just off the coast of Ireland. That's going to be swinging in through the course of the day. And as we go through to Sunday, the 16th of June, the low pressure then is sitting up over Scotland. Actually, probably not bringing too much rain through to the south. It's still a little bit uncertain about the detail of what's happening over the weekend. And I've been trying to do some festivals forecasts for the Isle of Wight festival. It's really hard to pin down the detail of what's going on over the weekend, but certainly for the north it looks very, very unsettled. Scotland, Northern Ireland, I think we will get quite a bit of rain over the weekend. Whether we get too much further south, I'm still not entirely sure. I'll have more on the detail of this for the 5-day forecast tomorrow. But in any case, the pattern is unsettled over the weekend, this area of low pressure swinging through. And then as we go through to the start of next week, well, we've got this area of low pressure developing down to the south of the country. I'll just highlight it very quickly. We've got an area of low pressure moving up from Spain in towards France. Now, quite where this area of low pressure is going, I'm not entirely sure, but if it comes up this way, it's going to bring some very heavy and thundery rain in across the British Isles. So let's see what the GFS model does with it this morning when it moves it northwards. But then we do get a ridge of high pressure building across the north of the country. So we've got a ridge trying to build in up over Scotland, an area of high pressure trying to build there, but the low pressure down to the south of the country is pushing northwards and coming up against that high pressure. So it implies that for Scotland we probably turn it drier at the start of next week, whereas for England and Wales we could turn it very, very wet indeed with a strong cold north-easterly wind. Now, as we go out beyond that, but if the low pressure gets far enough north, I should just say, if the low pressure does push further north, we'll cut off the north-east wind. It'll turn very warm because there's a lot of humid air associated with that low pressure. So quite a difficult one to pin down that at the start of next week. It could be a thundery low and possibly turn it very warm for a time in the south, but it may stay very wet and cold, so it's one of those that it's just got to wait and see what happens, really. As we go out to Wednesday, the 19th of June, everything is becoming very slack there. We've got these little areas of low pressure really within the flow, and there's not much going on. It's basically a case of showers or longer spells of rain with that, and some drier spells too. As we get out to a 10-day period, Friday the 21st, well, we're keeping it unsettled. We're actually bringing another area of low pressure into the north of Scotland, and things are going more westerly based then. Once we get through to Friday the 21st, bringing a broad westerly across the country. But again, that's quite unsettled with more rain coming in off the Atlantic. That sort of wash out. There will be dry days in there as well. But generally it's quite a changeable run from the GFS model. ECMWF for the weekend. Saturday shows that low pressure gain sitting off the coast of Ireland. Quite a deep low for the time of year, 995 millibars. That moves in across northern areas in particular through the weekend, taking some quite wet weather to Scotland and Northern Ireland at the very least. And then we're going to keep an eye on this area of low pressure out to the Atlantic. This is more or less the thundery low that we was looking at over France on the GFS model. This is sitting out to the west of the country, or to the southwest of the country. We've got to look at where that low pressure goes. The ECMWF wants to take it down this morning in towards Spain and Portugal as we get through to the start of next week. So this is a more settled sort of run from the ECMWF this morning. We build the ridge to the north and actually build it right over the top of the country. That low pressure is sitting more to the south of the country, bringing a deluge, no doubt, to much of France, Spain and Portugal at the start of next week. But for us, we probably keep high pressure influences going much more strongly than we do on the GFS for the start of next week. Not particularly hot, but it is mainly settled. And as we go through to the middle of next week, where we keep the high pressure more or less in trying to keep that cut-off low down to the south of the country. Then as we run through to the end of next week, we start to re-establish the westerly winds again, so it starts to turn more unsettled. But the ECMWF indicated that we could get a slightly better week as we go through next week. That's just the doorbell going. If you wonder what that noise was, there's somebody ringing the doorbell. But I'll carry on with the video. And for the GM finally, the Canadian model, it's the same idea for the weekend. We bring that low pressure in across the country on Saturday, the 15th of June. I can assure you that the door has been answered. I'm not leaving somebody standing on the step, by the way. As we go through to Sunday, the 16th of June, we bring this area of low pressure further north. Actually, the GM wants to bring the low pressure in right across the country. So that low pressure that the ECMWF was cutting off over Spain and Portugal, the GM, at the start of next week, moves that right in across the country. So yeah, the ECMWF had the low pressure down around here becoming cut off, whereas the GM has it up here right over the top of the country. That's a direct hit. So again, we've got to really try and pin down where this low pressure is going at the start of next week. It's going to be very, very important. But as we go through beyond that, the GM takes the low pressure out into the North Sea, and then we re-establish this broad westerly flow across the country. Quite a cool flow. And we're indicating by the end of the run from the GM that we're trying to build in a ridge of high pressure here across the country, so we've got a bit of a ridge trying to build, but there's probably still weather fronts and little troughs within that, so it's not as settled as it appears. But that's a long way off in any case, and we haven't yet pinned down the start of next week, so there's not really much point in looking beyond it. So we're looking at a changeable period. It's not going to be as settled as it was for the first week or so of June. We are looking at a more changeable period of weather, as I indicated, was likely to take place. A deterioration in the pattern is occurring. Going to be unsettled tomorrow, keeping it unsettled into the weekend, and then possibly keeping it unsettled into the start of next week as well. If the GM's right, it's going to turn very wet actually at the start of next week. As I say, a lot of uncertainty with where that low pressure is going early next week. So all in all, a lot going on, and thanks for watching. That's it for now.